kind of one of my extra videos that I've been doing the last couple months, and today I am going to do a list of standalones that I personally think are worth reading. It is a mixture of genres, because I read a mixture of genres, and I'm going to have some of my wine while I go. So the first one I'm going to recommend, I also understand it's not for everybody, as many of these books are, but it is called A Once Crowded Sky by Tom King. A Once Crowded Sky it gives me kind of like Watchmen vibes in terms of superheroes. The basic premise of the book is that this world has superheroes. At one point, they asked all superheroes to go ahead and to give up their powers in an effort to stop this great evil. One hero did not. Part of that was because he'd stepped down from being a superhero a number of years before, and the fact that he didn't meant that, like, they think they defeated the great evil, but because he still had his power, there was a lot of resentment tied up with that. And the story talks about that. Like, it talks about heroes and expectations and, like, self-fulfilling prophecies and, like, responsibility. I really loved it. Each chapter is summarized, too, with, like, a little comic strip, which was really fun. If you like superheroes, it's definitely something worth checking out. My second one is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I know everybody is talking about it right now, and I personally think it was really worth the hype. I really loved that story, and although I haven't had the same mental health struggles as the main character, I've also dealt a great deal with living with the decisions you make, and not so much regrets, but just like the what ifs. And for this one, there is a trigger warning for suicide. It's part of the opening chapter of the book, so if you are sensitive to that material, I would be very careful picking this book up. But basically you get to like a hub world and you get to try on these other lives, and it was just a really, really well executed concept, and the book itself was just phenomenal in my opinion. The third book I'd recommend for you guys is A Space Between Worlds. This is a, like, I would say new adult, young adult kind of book. It was written by Micaiah Johnson. I personally really enjoyed this book. I'm a sucker for, like, multiverse stuff, and this one had multiple universes and the ability to travel between them. Let me tell you, it was phenomenal. I loved it. It was a very interesting plot. You had just like these badass LGBTQ plus characters. So I felt that representation was pretty good, and they did a great job developing and like examining interpersonal relationships. Like, I highly recommend it for that. But also it was just like a thrilling action sci-fi, so it was just fast-paced and interesting the entire time. Then, switching gears a little bit here, I'm going to recommend The Lions of Fifth Avenue by Fiona Davis. This is a historical fiction novel that has two timelines. You follow Laura in 1913, and then you also follow, what is her name? Sadie, who is Laura's granddaughter, in 1993. Basically, there's this, you start with Sadie. There's this exhibit going up in the library she works in on Fifth Avenue, and it examines the life of people who used to live in the library, who you find out was her grandmother. This is all pretty early in the book. It's not really spoilery. And then the other point of view I mentioned already is Laura, and you follow her while she and her family are living in the library. Yeah, the main characters I personally found to be really, really intriguing. I loved following them and seeing the differences between them, but also like how certain things that happened in Laura's life ended up like affecting Sadie's down the line, just like generational issues, I guess. Like, it was just really, really good. I thought that it had pretty decent LGBTQ plus rep. Some of it I think that some of it that I didn't quite love was, I think, related to the fact that they were talking about a time where the LGBTQ plus community didn't really exist except in underground situations, and it was just, I don't know, I read this book, fell in love with it, and then binged all of Fiona Davis's other books, which tells you how much I liked it. And yeah, I really recommend it if you like any of the things I mentioned. Book 5 is another historical fiction. This is called The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. So the main character you follow, Ava, I think that was her name, and she helps forge documents to save children during the Second World War, and this Book of Lost Names is kind of like her recording the lives she saved so people can be connected to who they were before the war. And it was just a phenomenal historical fiction novel. A great main character with just like this really righteous and wholesome like motivator. And while for me the ending was a little bit of a letdown because it was a little tidier than I would hope for a book like that, overall the book was just really amazing. And I'm not going to talk about it too much because I remember talking about it a lot in my end of year videos because I was just over the moon about it. And so I'll just move on to book 6, which is The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper. I used to be very, very heavily into crime podcasts until I realized Libby existed. I was listening to crime podcasts at work almost exclusively, and this book is by Haley Rubenhold, and it's just, the title's pretty self-explanatory. It's a book about the 5 women who are thought to all be victims of Jack the Ripper, and kind of their lives and their situations and how they got to be where they are. I just really liked it because it sensationalized a lot of their lives and a lot of their choices, and it was just a very compelling book about the side of the story you don't really hear. It was really lovely to get to know these victims. I really like the idea that there's an untold aspect to history that we can still get to know, especially with something like this. And I really liked how grounded it was and how it was just very interesting. My 7th book is Midnight in Chernobyl, The Untold Story of the World's Greatest Nuclear Disaster, written by Adam Higginbotham. First thing, love that last name. Secondly, it was amazing. I knew what the Chernobyl disaster was, and I knew the general idea of how it came to happen, but this book explained it and was just written in such a way that it flowed really well, and it felt like there was a narrative and a plot to what was being told. You weren't just getting information shoved down your throat. And if you're interested in that situation and you don't really know a lot about it, I recommend this book. I found it to be a really great resource, and like I said, it was really well written, so it was really easy to go through. I don't have a lot to say about this in the last one because they're nonfiction. They're pretty self-explanatory when the titles, once you hear the titles. So next I'm going to run on to, kind of rush to get these done in one clip. 8 is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. It was a cool gothic atmosphere with tension and mystery. I didn't think the twist was that sensational. I had kind of figured it out pretty early on. So it won't necessarily keep you guessing, but it was intriguing and just fun. And like I said, I really liked the kind of gothic atmosphere that was there. With regards to that, you're following a woman who returns to a home she lived in for just a few weeks as a child. And it's supposedly haunted, and after this really traumatic incident, they left, and she's come back as an adult, and she's trying to get to the bottom of it to see if her father made everything up and what actually made her family move out so quickly. With that, I'll move on to 9, The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is a multi-POV mystery novel with a pretty dedicated sci-fi twist. I personally found it incredibly interesting. Just jumping from point of view to point of view, you're constantly getting new information, and I truly felt like I was solving the mystery along with the main character. You know that this woman, Evelyn Hardcastle, dies at the end, and you're trying to solve the mystery of her death, and like I mentioned, you do this by bouncing back and forth between these multiple point of views, and it's just, I loved it. It was incredibly worth reading, and even though I know it was like very hyped up when it came out, and it still deserves that hype. Okay, my battery's low, my camera is almost full, so I have to do this really quick. Circe by Madeline Miller. Loved it. The description I'm about to give it is going to do absolutely no justice to the story, but you follow Circe, who is like a witch slash part god, and you follow her as a little bit as a child to when she gets to her island, and you follow all the other like fuck ups that the gods do, and like where her family goes, and like the politics and political maneuverings that are going on. But it's from this like really strong female character who is a witch and part of Greek mythology, and I personally didn't know a lot about Circe before I read this book, and I really enjoyed it. I really loved how the story developed. I loved the writing. I loved the character. It was just all around really, really wonderful. And so, if you're looking for a Greek myth retelling and you have not picked up Circe, pick it up. And that's where I'm going to leave you guys here. I will bid you adieu here. Let me know below what you think of the books I brought up, whether you think they're overhyped, whether you think they're worth reading, or recommend me something if you think that I'm missing out on another good standalone. I will leave you guys here, and I will see you in the next video.